They called her daughter an animal. 1 week later, they regretted it. Welcome back and enjoy the story. Maria Rodriguez clutched her purse with trembling fingers, her knuckles whitening as she sat rigidly at the edge of her chair in Westwood Elementary's conference room. The air hung heavy with expensive perfume and silent judgment. 5 teachers sat across from her at the polished oak table, their faces a uniform mask of professional concern that did nothing to mask the disdain beneath. Maria's daughter, Sophia, slumped 2 seats away, her small frame nearly disappearing beneath a curtain of tangled black hair. The shame radiating from the 10-year-old was almost tangible, weighing down her narrow shoulders like a physical burden. Principal Harrington adjusted her glasses, her mouth a thin line of disapproval. Mrs. Rodriguez, we've called this meeting because we simply cannot tolerate Sophia's behavior any longer. The disruptions have become impossible to manage. Maria nodded stiffly, her English deserting her in moments of stress like this one. She had practiced responses on the bus ride over, mentally rehearsing the words she would need, but now they scattered like startled birds. I understand, she managed, her accent thickening. Sophia is having difficult time. At home, we working. Mrs. Rodriguez, Ms. Keller, Sophia's 4th-grade teacher, interrupted with a sharp edge to her voice. This isn't about a difficult time. Your daughter behaves like an animal in the classroom. Time stopped. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, suddenly deafening in the silence that followed. Maria felt as though she'd been slapped. No one corrected Ms. Keller. No one flinched. It wasn't a mistake or a heat-of-the-moment slip. It was a calculated sentence, sharpened with cruelty and delivered with precision. Maria's eyes darted to Sophia, who had shrunk even smaller, her face completely hidden now by her hair. The girl's shoulders shook almost imperceptibly. She was crying silently, a skill she had mastered over the past difficult year. 1,000. Responses flashed through Maria's mind. She wanted to scream, to flip the table, to demand an apology. She wanted to gather Sophia in her arms and storm out, never to return. But she did none of those things. Instead, Maria Rodriguez smiled. Not because she agreed, but because if she opened her mouth to speak her truth, she would sob. And they didn't deserve to see her break. I see, she said instead, her voice surprisingly steady. You tell me what Sophia needs to do better. The meeting continued, a barrage of complaints and areas for improvement and thinly veiled suggestions that perhaps Sophia would be better served in a different environment. Maria nodded and took notes in her worn spiral notebook, her handwriting neat despite her shaking hands. Sophia remained silent, as if trying to disappear completely. When they finally escaped into the crisp October air, Maria waited until they were a block away from the school before stopping and kneeling down in front of her daughter. Sophia's eyes were red-rimmed, her cheeks streaked with dried tears. Mija, Maria said softly, tucking Sophia's hair behind her ears so she could see her daughter's face clearly. We will go home now. We will have hot chocolate and then we will talk, yes? Sophia nodded mutely, slipping her small hand into her mother's as they walked the 12 blocks to their apartment building. Their home was small, a 1-bedroom apartment in a building that had seen better days. Maria had transformed it into a sanctuary with colorful throws over the second-hand furniture, family photos in mismatched frames, and potted plants thriving on every windowsill. Tonight, though, even its warmth couldn't dispel the chill that had followed them from the school. In their tiny kitchen with its peeling paint and temperamental appliances, Maria prepared hot chocolate the way her own mother had made it back in Guatemala, with cinnamon and a pinch of chili powder. When she finally sat across from Sophia at their wobbly table, she took her daughter's hands in hers. Sophia Luz Rodriguez, she said firmly, using her daughter's full name. You listen to me now. You are not an animal. You are light. It's in your name and it's in your heart. They just can't see past your skin, your voice, your silence, but I do. One day they'll regret what they said. Sophia nodded, though her eyes revealed she didn't believe it. I try to be good, Mama, she whispered, but the words get stuck. And then I get so frustrated that I know, Mija. Maria squeezed her hands. We will work on it together. But remember, there is nothing wrong with who you are. That night, after Sophia had fallen asleep in the pull-out bed they shared, Maria allowed herself to cry. The word animal echoed in her mind, a cruel refrain she couldn't silence. She thought of Sophia's struggles since moving to Chicago last year, how her daughter's intelligence was trapped behind a wall of language difficulties, and what the doctor had recently diagnosed as selective mutism, triggered by the trauma of leaving their home country and losing her father. Maria had sacrificed everything to bring Sophia to America after her husband's death, believing in the promise of better opportunities and a brighter future. Now, lying in the dark with tears sliding silently into her pillow, she wondered if she had made a terrible mistake. The days that followed were heavy with unspoken tension. Sophia became even more withdrawn, speaking barely at all, even at home. Maria took on an extra cleaning shift at the hotel where she worked to pay for the speech therapy the school had recommended, returning home long after Sophia had put herself to bed. A week after the disastrous parent-teacher conference, Maria was vacuuming the hotel's conference center when she overheard two managers discussing an upcoming event, a cultural exchange program bringing a delegation from Guatemala to Chicago, with a planned visit to several schools, including Westwood Elementary. The visitors included government officials interested in educational partnerships. Maria felt a spark of something she hadn't experienced in days: hope. That evening, she sat Sophia down at their kitchen table, where homework lay untouched. "Mija," she said, her voice animated for the first time in days, "I have news. People from Guatemala are coming to your school next week. Important people who want to see American schools." Sophia looked up, a flicker of interest crossing her face. "From home?" Maria nodded. "Yes, from home. And they will need someone who speaks Spanish and English to help them." She paused, watching her daughter carefully. "I was thinking perhaps you could volunteer." Sophia's eyes widened with panic. "Me? But Mama, I can't talk at school. You know I can't." "You can speak both languages beautifully," Maria said firmly. "And when you speak about things you care about, the words don't get stuck, remember? Like when you tell me about your books, or about the birds in the park." "But Ms. Keller said—" "Forget what she said," Maria interrupted more sharply than she intended. She softened her tone. "Sophia, do you remember what Abuela used to say? That our voices are our power. This is a chance to find your power again." Sophia stared down at her untouched math worksheet, conflict evident in her furrowed brow. Finally, she looked up at her mother. "Will you be there?" "I will ask for time off," Maria promised, although she knew it might cost her a day's wages. She could ill afford to lose. "I will be there." A tentative smile, the first in many days, curved Sophia's lips. "Okay, Mama, I'll try." If you are enjoying the story, type 5 in the comments and subscribe for more videos like this. If not, type 0. It helps me create even better content for you. Continuing. The following Monday, Maria accompanied Sophia to school, a knot of anxiety tightening in her stomach as they approached the red brick building. She had spoken with Principal Harrington by phone, explaining that Sophia was fluent in Spanish and offering her daughter's assistance with the Guatemalan delegation. The principal had sounded surprised but had agreed, perhaps seeing an opportunity to showcase the school's diversity. Now, as they entered the building, Maria felt eyes on them, curious, judgmental, surprised. Sophia walked close beside her. Her new dress, purchased at a thrift store but carefully ironed, a splash of yellow that made her look like the sunshine her middle name suggested. Principal Harrington met them in the lobby, her professional smile not quite reaching her eyes. "Mrs. Rodriguez, Sophia, thank you for coming early. The delegation will arrive at 9 for the school assembly, and then they'll tour the classrooms. Sophia, you'll sit on stage with our student council representatives and help translate as needed." Sophia nodded solemnly, her fingers tightening around her mother's hand. "You'll be wonderful," Maria whispered in Spanish as they followed the principal to the auditorium. "Remember, Mija, you are not what they say you are." The auditorium filled quickly with students and teachers. Maria took a seat in the back, watching as Sophia was led to the stage where 5 other children, all white from what Maria could tell, were already seated. Her daughter looked tiny and out of place among them in her bright yellow dress, her dark hair neatly braided down her back. Principal Harrington welcomed everyone, and then, with a practiced smile, announced the arrival of their special international visitors. The side doors opened, and 6 men and women in business attire entered, led by a distinguished man with silver at his temples, whom Principal Harrington introduced as Ambassador Ramirez. For the first 10 minutes, everything proceeded according to plan. The ambassador spoke in English, thanking the school for hosting them. Then one of the female delegates began speaking rapidly in Spanish, asking questions about the American educational system that Principal Harrington clearly couldn't understand. There was an awkward pause. The principal glanced at the student council president, a tall boy with perfectly combed blonde hair, who shrugged helplessly. And then, to Maria's astonishment and the visible shock of Ms. Keller, who was seated in the front row, Sophia stood up. With clear, unfaltering Spanish, she translated the woman's questions, her voice carrying through the auditorium. When Principal Harrington responded, Sophia seamlessly switched to Spanish, conveying the answers with poise and accuracy. A murmur rippled through the audience. Ms. Keller's mouth had fallen open slightly. Principal Harrington looked momentarily, taken aback before recovering with a tight smile. For the next hour, Sophia became the linchpin of the entire exchange. When the delegation toured classrooms, she walked confidently beside Ambassador Ramirez, explaining American teaching methods in Spanish and translating students' presentations into English. Her voice never wavered. There was no sign of the girl who had been rendered mute by anxiety just days before. Maria followed at a distance, her heart swelling with pride as she watched her daughter bloom before her eyes. In Sophia's own classroom, Ms. Keller appeared flustered as Sophia eloquently explained the science project displayed on the walls to the interested delegates. "Your daughter is remarkably articulate," Ambassador Ramirez commented to Maria during a break, having correctly guessed their relationship from Sophia's obvious glances toward her mother for encouragement. "Her command of both languages is impressive. We need more young people like her to bridge our cultures." Ms. Keller, standing nearby, flushed deeply. Maria merely smiled, savoring the moment. The crowning moment came during the closing ceremony, when Ambassador Ramirez surprised everyone by asking Sophia to join him at the podium. "This young lady," he said in accented but clear English, "represents the best of both our worlds. She has shown us today what it means to be a true cultural ambassador." As cameras flashed, the local newspaper having sent a photographer to cover the international visit, Sophia stood tall beside the ambassador, her smile radiant. In that moment, transformed by confidence and purpose, she looked nothing like this frightened, silent child who had hidden behind her hair just a week ago. Later, as the delegation prepared to leave, Maria watched from the back of the room as teachers and students surrounded Sophia, suddenly eager to speak with the girl they had previously ignored or dismissed. Ms. Keller hovered at the edges of the group, her expression unreadable. "They saw an animal," Maria whispered to herself, tears of pride stinging her eyes. "But I raised a queen." Will Sophia's newfound confidence last beyond this triumphant day? Or will the harsh reality of school life return once the excitement fades? The strength she discovered within herself today is real, but so are the challenges she still faces. The following morning, Sophia stood in front of their bathroom mirror, carefully braiding her hair the way Maria had shown her. Gone was the curtain she had hidden behind for months. Today her face was fully visible, her eyes bright with determination. "Are you nervous about going back to school?" Maria asked, pausing in the doorway with a basket of folded laundry. Sophia met her mother's eyes in the mirror. "A little," she admitted, "but Ambassador Ramirez said I have an important voice, and you always said that too." Maria set down the laundry and moved to stand behind her daughter, placing her hands gently on Sophia's shoulders. "You showed them all who you really are yesterday. I'm so proud of you, mija." The school day began differently than any before. As they approached Westwood Elementary, several students called out greetings to Sophia, children who had never acknowledged her existence previously. She responded with shy waves, staying close to Maria's side. In the hallway outside Sophia's classroom, they encountered Ms. Keller arranging papers at her desk. The teacher looked up, her expression softening when she saw them. "Good morning, Sophia," she said with a warmth that had never been present before. "We're starting our cultural heritage project today. I was hoping you might help lead one of the discussion groups." Sophia hesitated, looking up at Maria, who gave her an encouraging nod. "Yes, Miss Keller," Sophia said quietly but clearly. "I can do that." As Maria turned to leave, Ms. Keller called after her, "Mrs. Rodriguez, could I speak with you for a moment?" Maria braced herself, uncertain what to expect. She watched as Sophia took her seat, immediately joined by two girls, who began chatting with her. "Mrs. Rodriguez," Ms. Keller began, her voice low, "I owe you and Sophia an apology. What I said at our conference was unprofessional and unkind. I made assumptions about Sophia's capabilities based on her silence, and I was wrong." Maria studied the teacher's face, searching for sincerity and finding what appeared to be genuine remorse. "Sophia has always been capable," Maria replied evenly. "She just needed someone to believe in her." Ms. Keller nodded, her cheeks flushing. "The district has resources, a specialist who works with selective mutism. With your permission, I'd like to refer Sophia, not because there's anything wrong with her," she added quickly, "but to give her tools to manage her anxiety." Maria considered this. "I will think about it," she said finally, "and discuss with Sophia." As she left the school, Maria felt lighter than she had in months. One teacher's apology wouldn't erase the hurt or solve all their problems, but it was a start, an acknowledgement of Sophia's worth that had been denied for too long. The next few weeks brought gradual but steady changes. Sophia still had difficult days, when anxiety closed her throat and trapped her words, but they became less frequent. The speech therapist that Maria had scraped together money to see worked, in tandem with the school counselor now, giving Sophia strategies to manage her moments of panic. More surprising was the shift in how others at school treated Sophia. Her ability to move fluidly between two languages, once seen as a deficit, was now recognized as a gift. Several teachers asked her to help with Spanish language materials for younger ESL students. Classmates who had previously ignored her now sought her help with pronunciation for Spanish class. Maria noticed other changes too, Sophia humming as she did homework, initiating conversations at dinner, even making plans with a girl from class named Lily, who lived in their building, but whom Sophia had been too shy to approach before. 3. Weeks after the delegation's visit, Maria was called away from her cleaning cart by the hotel manager. "There's someone asking for you at the front desk," he said, his expression suggesting that this was an unusual occurrence. In the opulent lobby, so different from the service areas where Maria typically worked, stood Ambassador Ramirez, looking slightly out of place despite his expensive suit. "Mrs. Rodriguez," he said warmly, extending his hand. "I apologize for the intrusion, but I wanted to speak with you before I return to Guatemala tomorrow." Bewildered, Maria shook his hand. "Of course, sir. Is everything all right?" "More than all right," he assured her. "I wanted to tell you about a new educational initiative our government is launching. We're establishing a scholarship program for gifted bilingual students, a cultural bridge program that would include summer study in Guatemala and mentorship opportunities here in Chicago." Maria listened, her confusion growing. "That sounds wonderful, sir, but your daughter would be an ideal candidate," Ambassador Ramirez continued. "Her intelligence and language abilities impressed our entire delegation. With your permission, I'd like to nominate Sophia for one of the first scholarships." Maria stared at him, momentarily speechless. "You want to give Sophia a scholarship?" He smiled kindly. "Mrs. Rodriguez, children like Sophia, with feet in two worlds, are exactly who we need to build understanding between our countries. The program would provide educational opportunities through high school and potentially college, depending on funding sustainability." Tears welled in Maria's eyes before she could stop them. She had come to America dreaming of opportunities for Sophia, enduring countless hardships and humiliations in the belief that her sacrifice would eventually bear fruit. Now standing in this grand hotel lobby, where she usually emptied trash cans and vacuumed floors, she was being offered the very thing she had prayed for. "I don't know what to say," she managed finally. Say you'll discuss it with Sofia, Ambassador Ramirez replied. The program doesn't begin until next year. There's plenty of time to decide. He handed her an envelope. All the information is here, along with my contact details. Think about it. That evening, when Maria told Sofia about the ambassador's visit, her daughter's eyes grew wide with disbelief and excitement. He remembered me, Sofia whispered. He really wants me for the scholarship. Of course he remembered you, Maria said, gathering Sofia into a tight hug. How could anyone forget my brilliant girl once they truly see her? For a long moment, they held each other, the possibility of a brighter future unfolding before them like a map to unknown territories. Mama, Sofia said finally, her voice muffled against Maria's shoulder, I think I'm ready to speak at the class presentation tomorrow. Maria drew back to look into her daughter's eyes, seeing there a confidence that grew stronger each day. Then you will speak, Mika, and everyone will listen. At what point do we stop letting others define us? When does a child's damaged self-image begin to heal? For Sofia Rodriguez, the journey from silence to voice was only beginning, but already, the path ahead looked brighter than she could have imagined just weeks before. The class presentation that Sofia had mentioned was part of the Cultural Heritage Project that had been launched after the Guatemalan delegation's visit. Each student was to research their family heritage and share traditions, food, music, or stories from their culture. For weeks, Sofia had worked diligently on her project, practicing her presentation with Maria each evening, but refusing to commit to actually delivering it aloud in class. Until now. The next morning, Sofia dressed with particular care, choosing a traditional Guatemalan blouse that had belonged to her grandmother, one of the few family treasures they had brought with them to America. Maria braided colorful ribbons into her daughter's hair, the way women in their hometown had done for generations. You look beautiful, mija, Maria said, blinking back tears as Sofia twirled to show off her outfit. Your father would be so proud of you today. Sofia grew still at the mention of her father, who had died defending their small community from gang violence, the tragedy that had ultimately propelled Maria's decision to leave Guatemala. They spoke of him rarely, the pain still too fresh, but today Sofia nodded solemnly. Do you think he can see me, Mama? She asked quietly. Maria cupped her daughter's face in her hands. I know he can. He sees his brave, smart girl finding her voice again. When they arrived at school, Miss Keller greeted Sofia with genuine warmth. You look wonderful. Are you ready for your presentation today? Sofia took a deep breath and nodded. I'll be in the back of the room, Maria promised, before heading to her seat among the other parents who had come to watch the presentations. From her chair, Maria watched a procession of children share posters, artifacts, and hastily memorized facts about countries many of them had never visited. Ireland, Italy, Germany, Poland. The presentations were sweet, if somewhat superficial, met with polite applause from parents and classmates alike. When Sofia's turn came, she walked to the front of the classroom with her small shoulders squared, carrying a woven bag filled with items from home. Ms. Keller gave her an encouraging smile. My name is Sofia Luz Rodriguez, she began, her voice quiet but steady. I was born in Guatemala, in a town called San Miguel Escobar near Antigua. My heritage is Mayan and Spanish. She reached into her bag and pulled out a small hand-carved wooden figure. This is a worry doll. In Guatemala, children tell their worries to these dolls before sleeping, and the dolls take their troubles away during the night. Sofia looked directly at her classmates now, her voice growing stronger. When we first came to Chicago, I had so many worries that I needed 100 worry dolls. I was scared of the new language, the new school, the cold weather. Everything felt wrong, and so I stopped talking. The words got stuck in my throat like they were afraid to come out. A hushed attention fell over the classroom. This was no longer a simple heritage presentation, but something far more personal. Maria felt her chest tighten with emotion. In Guatemala, there's a legend about a bird called the Quetzal, Sofia continued, showing a picture of the vibrant green and red bird. The Quetzal was silent for many years after the Spanish conquest because it was so sad about what happened to the Mayan people. But one day it found its voice again and remembered how to sing. She paused, looking directly at Maria in the back of the room, drawing strength from her mother's presence. Sometimes people think if you're quiet, you have nothing important to say or you're not smart. Sometimes they call you names or think you're, she hesitated only briefly, different. But being quiet doesn't mean those things. Sometimes the quietest people have the most important things to say when they're ready. There wasn't a restless shuffle or whisper in the room now. Every eye was fixed on Sophia, including those of Principal Harrington, who had slipped in quietly. Partway through the presentation, Sophia spent the next several minutes sharing traditions and stories from Guatemala, teaching her classmates a few words in Spanish and in Quiche, the Mayan language her grandmother had spoken. She passed around pieces of traditional sweetbread for everyone to taste. When she finished, the applause was immediate and enthusiastic. Children crowded around her, asking questions about the colorful photos she had displayed, admiring the intricate weaving of her blouse, requesting more worry dolls. From her spot at the back of the room, Maria watched in wonder as her once isolated daughter became the center of positive attention. Ms. Keller caught Maria's eye across the room and gave her a nod of profound respect. As the class prepared for recess, Principal Harrington approached Maria. "Mrs. Rodriguez, I wanted to let you know that Sophia's story has inspired us to start a cultural ambassador program here at Westwood. We're hoping Sophia might help us develop it." Maria smiled, remembering the frightened woman who had barely been able to speak at the parent-teacher conference just weeks ago. "I think she would like that very much," she said confidently. The principal hesitated, then added in a lower voice, "I also want to apologize for how Sophia was treated before. It's clear we failed to see her gifts." "Yes," Maria agreed simply. "You did." Principal Harrington accepted this candor with a respectful nod. "We're working to do better. For Sophia and for all our students who come from different backgrounds." The next morning brought an unexpected visitor to their apartment. Ms. Keller, looking somewhat uncomfortable as she stood in their small living room, declining Maria's offer of coffee. "I wanted to drop this off," the teacher said, handing Sophia a book of Guatemalan folk tales, "and to ask if you might consider speaking to our teachers during our professional development day next month about your experience, about how we can better support students like Sophia." Maria blinked in surprise. "You want me to teach the teachers?" Ms. Keller smiled ruefully. "Sometimes we're the ones who need the most education." Sophia watched this exchange with wide eyes, a tentative smile playing at her lips. "I will think about it," Maria said, not yet ready to fully trust this transformation in the teacher who had wounded them so deeply. As Ms. Keller left, Sophia turned to her mother. "You should do it, Mama. You always know the right things to say." Maria laughed softly. "Oh? And when did you become so wise?" Sophia's expression turned serious. "When I stopped believing the wrong things people said about me." "Have you ever felt judged unfairly, or known someone who was labeled incorrectly based on superficial observations? Leave your thoughts in the comments below." Spring arrived in Chicago, melting away the harsh winter that had blanketed the city for months. In the small park near their apartment building, Maria sat on a bench watching Sophia and her friend Lily feeding ducks at the pond's edge. The girls' laughter carried across the water, a sound that never failed to lift Maria's heart. 6 months had passed since that terrible parent-teacher conference and the subsequent visit from the Guatemalan delegation that had changed everything. In that time, Sophia had transformed from a silent, withdrawn child into a confident student who now raised her hand in class, participated in the school's cultural ambassador program, and even joined the debate club, shocking everyone with her articulate arguments once she overcame her initial anxiety. The scholarship offered by Ambassador Ramirez had been formalized, providing not only summer study opportunities, but also tutoring, mentorship, and eventually college application support. Sophia had already begun corresponding with her assigned mentor, a Guatemalan-American graduate student at the University of Chicago, who was helping her develop a reading list that celebrated both her cultures. But perhaps the most significant change wasn't in the external opportunities that had suddenly opened up for Sophia. It was in how she carried herself, head high, voice clear, no longer trying to disappear. "Mama!" Sophia called from the pond's edge. Come see, there's a baby duckling following Lily around like she's its mother. Maria smiled and walked over to join the girls, who were carefully circling the pond as a tiny yellow duckling waddled determinedly after them. He thinks I'm his mama because I gave him the most bread, Lily explained seriously. That's how love works sometimes, Maria agreed. We care for those who nurture us. As they walked home later, Sophia skipping ahead with Lily, Maria reflected on the journey they had taken. The pain of that conference room hadn't disappeared entirely. Such wounds never did. But it had transformed into something else, a determination that had propelled both Sophia and herself forward. Maria had indeed spoken at the Teacher Professional Development Day, her initial reluctance giving way to conviction as she shared their story. She spoke of the damage done by low expectations and careless words, of the intelligence that can be masked by language barriers and anxiety, of the resilience children show when even one person truly believes in them. Afterward, several teachers had approached her with tears in their eyes, thanking her for her honesty and asking how they could do better. Some shared stories of their own immigrant parents or grandparents who had faced similar struggles. Principal Harrington had asked Maria to join a newly formed parent advisory committee focused on making Westwood more inclusive. Now, as Sophia ran back to take her hand, Maria marveled at how life could change course so dramatically in such a short time. "Mama," Sophia said suddenly, her expression turning serious, "Miss Keller asked me if I would talk to a new boy in our class. His name is Than. He just came from Vietnam and doesn't speak much English yet. She thinks I might be able to help him feel less scared." Maria squeezed her daughter's hand. "And what do you think about that?" Sophia considered this for a moment. I know how it feels when words get stuck, even if I don't speak. Vietnamese, I can show him that it gets better." That evening, as Sophia worked on a welcome card for Tan, decorating it with carefully drawn pictures that would transcend language barriers, Maria received a call from Ambassador Ramirez. "Mrs. Rodriguez," he greeted her warmly, "I'm calling with some news. The Cultural Bridge program has received additional funding, and we're expanding our initiatives. We're looking for a community liaison, someone who can help us identify more children like Sophia and work with their families to access our resources." "That sounds wonderful," Maria said sincerely. "I was hoping you might consider the position," the ambassador continued. "It would be part-time initially, with flexibility around your current work schedule." Maria nearly dropped the phone. "Me? But I don't have the qualifications." "You have exactly the qualifications we need," Ambassador Ramirez interrupted gently. "You understand both worlds. You've navigated the system as a parent. You know what these families need, because you've lived it." After hanging up, Maria sat in stunned silence at their little kitchen table, a job that valued her experience rather than seeing her as just another pair of hands to clean hotel rooms, a chance to help other families avoid the pain and isolation she and Sophia had endured. When she told Sophia the news, her daughter threw her arms around her in a fierce hug. "See, Mama, I told you they would see how amazing you are too." The following Monday, Sophia approached the new Vietnamese boy during lunch, sitting quietly beside him and offering him half of her sandwich when she noticed he wasn't eating the unfamiliar cafeteria food. She didn't try to force conversation, but simply provided silent companionship, a presence that said more clearly than words, "I understand. I've been where you are." By the end of lunch period, she had coaxed a small smile from Than with her drawings and taught him 3 English words which he repeated carefully after her. It wasn't much, but it was a beginning. "You did well," Miss Keller told Sophia afterward, her expression sincere. "Sometimes kindness speaks louder than any language." Sophia nodded thoughtfully. "My mama says that's how we heal the world, one person at a time." That afternoon, as Sophia and Maria walked home together, they passed the playground where, months earlier, Sophia had been ostracized and taunted for her silence and her differences. Today, several children called out greetings, and Lily ran over to make plans for a weekend playdate. "Are you happy here now?" Maria asked softly as they continued walking, the spring breeze carrying the scent of newly blooming flowers. Sophia considered this question with the seriousness she brought to all things. I still miss Guatemala sometimes, she admitted. I miss the mountains and abuela's cooking and hearing everyone speak Spanish. But I'm not afraid anymore. She squeezed her mother's hand. And I have friends now, real ones. What would Sofia become in this new life they were building, Maria wondered. A translator? A diplomat? A teacher? The possibilities stretched before her daughter like an open road, no longer blocked by the barriers of prejudice and misunderstanding that had once seemed insurmountable. Ahead of them, the sun broke through clouds that had threatened rain all day, illuminating their path home with sudden brilliance. Look, Mama, Sofia pointed, upward in delight. A rainbow. Will Sofia's newfound confidence continue to grow, allowing her to become a bridge between cultures and a voice for others who remain silent? And how will Maria's new position impact their lives and the community around them? The journey ahead holds both challenges and promise. That night, Maria sat at their kitchen table long after Sofia had gone to bed, looking through the materials Ambassador Ramirez had sent over about her new position. The job description was daunting: identifying potential scholarship recipients, conducting community outreach, helping families navigate application processes, coordinating with schools. But with each bullet point she read, Maria felt a growing certainty that she could do this work, that she was meant to do it. Her phone buzzed with a text from Ms. Keller, who had gradually become something of an ally over the past months. Than smiled in class today after working with Sofia, first time since he arrived. Your daughter has a gift. Maria smiled, typing back a simple thank you before returning to her papers. The transformation in their lives still felt fragile sometimes, like a dream from which she might awaken to find herself back in that conference room, hearing her daughter compared to an animal, powerless to defend her. But then she would hear Sofia laughing with Lily over a video call, or catch her practicing a presentation in front of the bathroom mirror, and know that the change was real. Her daughter was finding her place in this new world, not by becoming someone different, but by being truly seen for who she had always been. Sofia's journey had opened doors for Maria as well. Beyond the new job opportunity, she had found her own voice as an advocate. First for Sofia, then for other immigrant families navigating Westwood Elementary's sometimes bewildering systems. Principal Harrington had taken to calling her for input on school communications to ensure they were accessible to non-English-speaking parents. Several teachers had requested her help in making their classroom materials more culturally inclusive. As she organized the papers into a folder, Maria's eyes fell on a small drawing Sofia had made weeks ago. A girl standing tall on a stage, surrounded by smiling faces. Below it, in careful handwriting, "Me when I found my voice." Maria touched the paper gently, her throat tightening with emotion. Tomorrow would mark the start of her new position with the Cultural Bridge program. Sofia had helped her choose an outfit, professional but not intimidating, her daughter had insisted, and practiced potential conversation starters for meeting new families. They were partners now in more ways than one, each finding their path forward together. As spring blossomed into summer, both Sofia and Maria flourished in their new roles. Sofia's mentorship of Than had expanded to include two other recent immigrant students, a girl from Honduras and a boy from the Philippines. With remarkable intuition, she seemed to know exactly when to give them space and when to gently encourage participation, drawing on her own experience of feeling trapped in silence. "You've created quite the support network," Ms. Keller commented one afternoon as she watched Sofia working with her small group in the school library. "These children are making progress twice as fast as we typically see." "Sofia says they just need someone who believes they have something valuable to say," Maria replied, filling out paperwork for the Cultural Ambassador Summer program that would include all 4 children. Ms. Keller's expression softened with something like regret. She would know. The teacher had proven her transformation was genuine by consistently advocating for Sofia and the other multilingual students, even facing pushback from colleagues who were resistant to changing their teaching approaches. Maria had gradually come to see her as an ally rather than an adversary, though she never forgot those cutting words spoken in that conference room, understanding that genuine change required both forgiveness and vigilance. In June, Maria organized the program's first community gathering in the park near their apartment building. Families from a dozen different countries brought food, music, and stories to share. Sophia moved confidently among them, translating where needed, making introductions, ensuring no one felt left out. "Your daughter is a natural diplomat," Ambassador Ramirez observed, having returned to Chicago for the event. "She builds bridges, effortlessly." "Not effortlessly," Maria corrected gently. "She works very hard at it, but she understands what it means to be seen or not seen." As twilight fell and lanterns were lit around the gathering, Sophia climbed onto a small platform that had been set up for announcements. The crowd quieted, parents pulling children onto laps, conversations fading to attentive silence. "Welcome, everyone," Sophia began, her voice clear and carrying across the park. "In Guatemala, there's a tradition of storytelling called La Hora, Del Cuento Story Hour, when families gather to share tales that connect us to our past and to each other." She proceeded to tell a simple but moving story about a bird that loses its song and finds it again with the help of unexpected friends. She told it first in English, then in Spanish, her expressive hands helping to convey meaning across language barriers. When she finished, the applause was warm and enthusiastic. Lily, who had appointed herself Sophia's unofficial assistant for the event, rushed up to the platform. "Now everyone can share a story from their culture if they want to," she announced, her exuberance drawing laughter from the crowd. What followed was a magical hour of tales from Vietnam, Philippines, Mexico, Poland, Ethiopia, and more, some told through translators, others in a mixture of English and native languages, all received with respectful attention and appreciation. As Maria listened, she marveled at how far they had come from those dark days of isolation. The painful words still echoed sometimes, "Your daughter behaves like an animal." But they had been overwhelmed by new truths. Sophia was a leader, a bridge builder, a storyteller. She had found her voice, and in doing so had helped others find theirs. The summer program exceeded everyone's expectations. 26 children participated, engaging in cultural exchange activities, language development workshops, and community service projects. Sophia blossomed in the role of junior counselor, her confidence growing daily as she helped younger children navigate between languages and traditions. Tan, who had begun the program barely speaking above a whisper, had performed a Vietnamese folk song at the closing ceremony, his clear voice bringing tears to his parents' eyes. The Honduran girl, Gabriela, had written a poem that was selected for publication in a citywide student anthology. Each success story strengthened Maria's conviction that they were doing essential work, not just helping children adapt to American culture, but preserving and celebrating the richness they brought with them. By the time the new school year approached, Maria had been offered a full-time position with the Cultural Bridge Program, with a salary that would allow them to move to a larger apartment in a safer neighborhood. Sophia would remain at Westwood, now entering 5th grade with Ms. Rivera, a new teacher who had worked extensively with multilingual students. The week before school started, they received a surprising invitation to attend a school board meeting. Principal Harrington had called personally to extend it, explaining that Westwood's Cultural Ambassador program was being recognized for its innovative approach to supporting immigrant students. The board would like Sophia to speak briefly about her experience, the principal explained. Only if she feels comfortable, of course. Sophia, listening on speakerphone, had immediately said yes. Now, as they entered the imposing downtown building, where the school board met, Maria felt a flutter of nervousness on her daughter's behalf. This would be Sophia's largest audience yet, not just school administrators, but city officials and education reporters. "Are you sure you're ready for this, Mija?" she asked quietly, as they found their seats in the large conference room. Sophia straightened her new blouse, a gift from Ambassador Ramirez's wife, who had taken a special interest in her. "I'm nervous," she admitted, "but Ms. Keller says that's normal. Even good speakers get butterflies." Maria smiled at this evidence of the continuing evolution in Sophia's relationship with her former teacher. Ms. Keller had spent hours helping Sophia prepare her remarks for tonight, another step in her ongoing effort to make amends for past misjudgments. The meeting began with routine business that Maria only half followed, her attention focused on Sophia, who sat with uncharacteristic stillness beside her, mentally rehearsing her speech. When Principal Harrington was finally called to present on Westwood's program, Maria squeezed her daughter's hand encouragingly. The Cultural Ambassador Initiative began quite organically, Principal Harrington explained to the board, arising from our recognition that we weren't adequately serving our diverse student population. It took the insight of one remarkable student to show us what was possible. She went on to outline the program's components and impressive early results: improved test scores for ESL students, reduced absenteeism, increased parent involvement, and enhanced cultural awareness throughout the school. But statistics tell only part of the story, she concluded. With your permission, I'd like to introduce Sophia Rodriguez, the fifth grader, whose courage and resilience inspired our program. Sophia walked to the podium with measured steps, appearing calm despite the churning butterflies she had confessed to earlier. She adjusted the microphone and looked out at the room full of adults whose decisions shaped the educational experiences of thousands of children. 1 year ago, she began, her voice soft but steady, I was known at my school as the girl who didn't talk. So my teacher called me an animal. A ripple of discomfort moved through the audience. Maria saw Ms. Keller, seated near the front, flinch slightly but maintain her composure. I wasn't an animal, Sophia continued. I was scared. I was grieving for my home country and my father. I was struggling to find my place in a new world where I didn't know the rules and where people looked at me like I didn't belong. She paused, her gaze moving across the faces, watching her intently. But I was also strong, I was smart, I was brave. I just needed someone to see those things in me instead of only seeing what I couldn't do yet. Sophia proceeded to describe how the Cultural Ambassador program had transformed not only her experience, but that of dozens of other children at Westwood. She spoke of Than's musical performance, Gabriella's published poem, and the community gatherings that had brought families together across cultural divides. Every child has gifts, she concluded, her voice gaining strength. Sometimes they're hidden behind language barriers or fear or painful experiences, but that doesn't mean they're not there. We just need teachers and schools brave enough to look harder, to listen better, and to believe in what they can't see yet. The applause that followed was immediate and thunderous. Board members rose to their feet, joined by the audience in a standing ovation that brought a flush of surprise to Sophia's cheeks. As she returned to her seat, Maria enfolded her in a fierce embrace, too overcome with pride to speak. The board voted unanimously to expand the Cultural Ambassador program to 5 additional schools, with Westwood serving as the model. Reporters clustered around Principal Harrington and Sophia afterward, cameras flashing as the 10-year-old answered questions with poise and thoughtfulness. You've started something important, a board member told Maria as the crowd began to disperse. Something that will help many children find their voices. Maria nodded, watching as Sophia chatted animatedly with a group that included Ms. Keller, Principal Harrington, and several teachers from other schools eager to implement similar programs. She found her voice, Maria said simply. Now she's helping others find theirs. Later that night, as they walked home through streets gilded by lamplight, Sophia was uncharacteristically quiet, seemingly processing the evening's events. What are you thinking about? Maria asked finally. Sophia looked up at the night sky, where stars struggled to be seen through Chicago's ambient light. I was thinking about what that reporter asked me, if I'm still angry about being called an animal. Maria tensed slightly. And what do you think? I think, Sophia said slowly, that if it hadn't happened, maybe we wouldn't have tried so hard to prove them wrong. Maybe I wouldn't have volunteered to help with the Guatemalan visitors. Maybe we wouldn't have started the Ambassador program. She was quiet for another moment before adding, I'm not glad it happened, it hurt a lot, but I'm glad about what we built afterward. Maria considered her daughter's wisdom with a surge of pride mixed with wistfulness. At just 10 years old, Sophia was learning lessons about resilience and forgiveness that many adults never mastered. You know what Abuela used to say? Maria reminded her. La vida no es lo que uno vivió, sino lo que uno recuerda, y cómo la recuerda. Life is not what one lived, but what one remembers and how one remembers it, Sophia translated, smiling, at the memory of her grandmother's favorite Gabriel Garcia Marquez quote. Exactly, Maria said, draping an arm around her daughter's shoulders as they walked. We get to choose which parts of our story define us. The final day of 5th grade arrived warm and bright, the classroom windows open to catch the June breeze. Sophia sat at her desk, watching as Ms. Rivera handed out certificates and awards, her mind already half-turned toward the summer program where she would help mentor new immigrant students. And now, Ms. Rivera announced, the Westwood Citizenship Award, given to the student who best exemplifies our school values of empathy, leadership, and community service. Sophia applauded politely as the teacher opened the envelope, expecting to hear Jasmine's name, the 6th grader who organized regular neighborhood cleanups, or perhaps Michael, who had started a buddy reading program for kindergartners. Sophia Rodriguez, Ms. Rivera announced instead, her smile warm and genuine. For a moment, Sophia sat frozen in surprise as her classmates erupted in applause around her. Lily reached over to squeeze her arm encouragingly, and Than, now comfortable enough to speak regularly in class, gave her a thumbs up from across the room. As Sophia walked to the front to accept the certificate and small trophy, she caught sight of her mother standing at the back of the classroom, having slipped in for the final ceremonies. Maria's eyes shone with tears, but her smile was radiant with pride. That evening they celebrated with a special dinner at home, traditional Guatemalan dishes prepared with ingredients Maria had splurged on from the Latin market across town. As they ate, they talked about the upcoming summer and the changes ahead, their move to the new apartment next month, the expanded Cultural Bridge program, Sophia's transition to middle school in the fall. I was thinking, Sophia said, twirling her fork in her rice, about something Ambassador Ramirez said when he visited my class last week. He said that sometimes the people who face the biggest challenges become the strongest leaders because they understand what it means to overcome. Maria nodded, remembering her own journey from frightened immigrant to program coordinator, from a woman who could barely speak in a parent-teacher conference to someone who now regularly addressed community groups and school officials. He's right, she agreed. Our challenges shape us. Sophia set down her fork, her expression turning serious. I want to start a club when I get to middle school, for kids like me who have trouble speaking up or who feel different or scared. A place where they can practice being brave together. That sounds like a wonderful idea, Maria said, her heart swelling with love for this remarkable child who had emerged from the shadows of fear and judgment to become a light for others. What will you call it? Sophia thought for a moment, then smiled. The Voice Finders. 2 weeks later, as they packed boxes for their move, Maria came across Sophia's old worry dolls, carefully wrapped in tissue paper and tucked into a drawer. She held one of the tiny fabric figures in her palm, remembering how Sophia had clutched them during those first difficult months in Chicago, whispering her fears to them each night in hopes they would carry her burdens away while she slept. Sophia? She called. Do you want to keep these in your new room? Sophia appeared in the doorway, her hair pulled back in a neat ponytail, no longer a hiding place but simply a practical style for the warm summer day. She looked at the worry dolls in her mother's hand and smiled. Yes, she said decidedly, but not for me anymore, for the Voice Finders Club. Sometimes new kids might need them until they learn to speak their worries out loud. Maria carefully rewrapped the dolls and placed them in the box marked for Sophia's new bedroom, adding a label in her neat handwriting, for the Voice Finders. As summer bloomed across Chicago, Sophia and Maria moved into their new apartment, a second-floor unit in a well-maintained building with large windows and a small balcony where Maria immediately began cultivating herbs and flowers. The neighborhood was diverse and vibrant, with a public library within walking distance and a community garden where they quickly secured a small plot. Sophia's cultural bridge program activities kept her busy 3 days a week, working with younger children and practicing the leadership skills that had once seemed impossible for the silent, frightened girl she had been. The other days were filled with library visits, swimming lessons at the public pool, a new skill Sophia was determined to master, and explorations of their new neighborhood with Lily, who visited regularly, despite the longer distance. One evening, in late July, as they sat on their balcony watching the sunset paint the sky in brilliant oranges and pinks, Sophia suddenly asked, "Do you ever miss our old apartment?" Maria considered the question, surprised by it. "The walls were thin, the heating unreliable, and the neighbors too loud," she said carefully. "But it was our first home in Chicago. We made memories there." She looked at her daughter curiously. "Do you miss it?" Sophia shook her head. "Not really, but sometimes I think about who I was when we lived there, and it feels like a different person." "Not different," Maria corrected gently. "Just growing. That Sophia is still part of you. She's just found her strength now." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, the city's evening sounds creating a familiar urban lullaby around them. "Mama," Sophia said finally, "do you think Ms. Keller really changed? Or is she just pretending because she got in trouble?" The question caught Maria off guard with its perceptiveness. She thought carefully before answering, knowing her daughter deserved her honesty. "I think people can change when they recognize their mistakes and truly want to do better," she said, slowly. "Ms. Keller has worked very hard this past year to support you and other students. Her actions show that she's trying to be different." Sophia nodded thoughtfully. "I think so too. Last week, when Gabriela got frustrated during our poetry workshop and started speaking Spanish, Ms. Keller didn't tell her to use English. She just waited and then asked me to help translate the idea so everyone could hear it. The old Miss Keller would have made Gabriela feel bad." "That's growth," Maria agreed. "For all of us." In August, as the summer program wound down and preparations for the new school year began, Maria received an unexpected invitation. The district superintendent wanted her to speak at the opening professional development session for all teachers in the district, sharing insights from the Cultural Bridge program and her own experiences as an immigrant parent. "They want me to talk about creating inclusive classrooms," Maria told Sophia, still somewhat bewildered by the request. "Me, who couldn't even speak up at your conference a year ago." Sophia rolled her eyes with the fond exasperation of a child who sometimes saw more clearly than her parent. "That's exactly why they want you, Mama. You know what it feels like when schools get it wrong, and you know what helps make it right." Maria began preparing her presentation with the same careful attention she brought to all her work, drawing on stories from the families she had assisted, research on best practices for multilingual learners, and her own journey from intimidated parent to educational advocate. The night before the presentation, as she practiced in their living room with Sophia as her audience, Maria realized how completely their lives had transformed in just 1 year. From isolation to community, from silence to voice, from judgment to respect. "How does it sound?" she asked after running through her opening remarks. "Powerful," Sophia said simply. "They'll listen to you." The professional development session was held in the high school auditorium, filled with hundreds of teachers from across the district. Maria felt a flutter of nervousness as she was introduced, but it dissipated when she spotted Sophia in the audience, sitting beside Principal Harrington and Ms. Keller, her encouraging smile a beacon of confidence. "A year ago," Maria began, her voice steady and clear, "I sat in a conference room at Westwood Elementary and heard my daughter described as an animal because her trauma and anxiety had rendered her temporarily silent." The auditorium grew very still. "Today I want to tell you about what happened next, not just how my daughter found her voice, but how that moment of failure became the catalyst for a program that has now helped dozens of children and families find belonging in their schools and communities." For the next 30 minutes, Maria shared stories of transformation, Sophia's, yes, but also Tan's, Gabriela's, and others whose lives had been touched by the Cultural Ambassador program. She offered practical suggestions for teachers, simple ways to make classrooms more welcoming, strategies for engaging reluctant speakers, approaches for honoring home languages while building English proficiency. The children in your classrooms come to you with different languages, different traumas, different gifts, she concluded. Some will be easy to teach, easy to like. Others will challenge you with their silence or their struggle or their difference. In those moments of challenge, I ask you to remember that behind every difficult behavior is a child trying to tell you something they may not have words for yet. Your job, our job together, is to help them find those words, to create spaces where all children can speak their truth and be heard. The standing ovation that followed brought unexpected tears to Maria's eyes. As teachers lined up afterward to speak with her, to share their own stories and ask questions, she felt a profound sense of purpose crystallizing within her. This work, helping educators truly see and serve all their students, was perhaps what she had been moving toward all along, through all the hardships and sacrifices. The middle school year began with both challenges and triumphs. Sophia faced the typical adjustments, changing classes, multiple teachers, complex social dynamics, but approached them with a resilience that made Maria's heart swell with pride. The Voice Finders Club was officially approved, meeting weekly in the school, library with an enthusiastic language arts teacher as sponsor. In October, exactly 1 year after that painful parent-teacher conference, Maria and Sophia sat together on their balcony, watching the sunset and sharing a plate of pastries from the Guatemalan bakery that had recently opened nearby. "Happy anniversary," Sophia said unexpectedly, a hint of mischief in her smile. Maria looked at her quizzically. "Anniversary?" 1 year since the worst day that turned into the best year, Sophia explained, breaking a pastry in half and offering part to her mother. 1 year since they called me an animal and you told me I was a queen." Maria shook her head in wonder at her daughter's perspective. "You remember that?" "I remember everything about that day," Sophia said, her expression growing serious. "How small I felt in that conference room. How you held yourself together even though I could tell you wanted to cry. How you knelt beside me in our kitchen and promised me that one day they would regret what they said." She took a bite of her pastry, chewing thoughtfully before adding, "And they did regret it. But more importantly, we proved them wrong." Maria reached across the small table between them to clasp her daughter's hand. "Yes, Mia, we certainly did." As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in deepening shades of purple and gold, Maria reflected on their journey, not just the past year of transformation, but the longer path that had brought them from Guatemala to Chicago, from tragedy to new beginnings, from silence to powerful voice. They had come to America seeking safety and opportunity, carrying little more than hope and determination. The path had been harder than Maria had anticipated, marked by prejudice and misunderstanding, alongside moments of unexpected kindness and connection. But sitting here now watching her daughter's profile against the twilight sky, Maria knew with certainty that they had found their place. Not just a physical home, but a purpose and a community. Sophia, seeming to sense her mother's thoughts, turned to her with a smile that held all the wisdom and hope of her 11 years. "We're going to be okay, aren't we, Mama?" "Yes, my love," Maria answered, her heart full. "We already are." Congratulations. Type 9 in the comments so that I know you stayed until the end with me. Thank you for watching, and until tomorrow's story on this same channel.